I'm your host, Olivia Fierro, here to kind of be your annoying friend who encourages you to make good choices. Meaning, like, I don't know, skip that Dateline marathon of old episodes. You've seen them anyways before, and pick up a good thriller instead. And we have got one for you, so just hold on. And speaking of, if you generally need book recommendations, then Margaret will be joining us shortly with a few hot picks to tack on to your already tall TBR. But right now, welcome to our guest, number one New York Times best-selling author, master of psychological suspense, Lisa Jewell, whose latest novel is The Night She Disappeared. So, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us from across the pond. Sadly, the in real life tour canceled, but virtually is better than not at all. So, thank you.
Oh, no, thank you for having me here. It's fantastic.
Congratulations on yet another one. And I'm going to admit to you that it was just about this time last year when a friend finally was a good friend to me and reached out to me and handed me The Family Upstairs. And that, of course, changed my life. So so from there, we did Then She Was Gone as one of our book club selections, and on it goes. So I know that your fans know exactly how engaging your books are and what you're delivering when you sit down to write. So set the stage for me for The Night She Disappeared.
Okay, so The Night She Disappeared is about, it's a young teenage parents, a couple, Zach and Tallulah, and they go to the pub one Friday night and they leave their baby Noah at home with Tallulah's mum, Kim. They head off to a party at this huge mansion out in the countryside. A pool party. They meet some friends in the pub for a pool party and they never come back. And the story picks up a year later when a new head teacher has just started at the posh boarding school in the same village that Zach and Tallulah lived in. And his partner is wandering through the grounds of this new boarding school and finds nailed to a fence in the grounds a cardboard sign with the words "Dig Here" scrawled on it. And she digs, and then the story begins.
It's so it goes, and we get so involved from there. And first of all, the fact that she's a writer and she's always looking to uncover mysteries is, I imagine that you are a little bit both Sophie and also Kim. And it's the ferocious mother who really will never give up on knowing that her daughter would not choose to leave her and leave her little boy. So there's a lot of relatable drama and stress as a mom that you can connect with Kim. Not only that, but just the sympathy of her being surprised and responsible full time for a little baby. So there is a lot that you were able to unpack here.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So Kim is only 39. So she wasn't expecting to be a grandmother at such a young age. She certainly wasn't expecting to be left alone to raise her daughter's child at such a young age. And she's kind of one of those mothers who was really happy when her children reached milestones and became more independent and was thoroughly enjoying having much older children and seeing her future unfurl in front of her. And in fact, on the night that she's at home looking after the baby, she would normally have been in the pub having drinks with her friends. So her life just suddenly spins way backwards. So she's got a lot to take on board, as you say, including the fact that her daughter has gone missing. And the theory is that the teenage parents couldn't take the responsibility of raising a child, so they've run away. She knows that her daughter Tallulah was absolutely on top of the responsibility of raising a child. And then there's Sophie, who isn't a mother but is a detective novelist. So yes, you could say that I related to her on a lot of levels. So she's only just moved to the countryside, and she's at a bit of a loose end, really. She can't get back into the rhythm of writing her novel, which is another thing that I can relate to, particularly at this time of year, at the end of the summer. So she can't get back into writing her novel. So she's got all this time on her hands, and absolutely, you could say interested in mysteries. You could say nosy. I would say I'm a very nosy person. And so is she, and she can't let things lie. She can't just see something and think, well, that could be interesting, but it's none of my business. I'm going to walk on by. No, she has to get involved and find out exactly what's going on.
Well, writers can always say it's all research. I mean, you're just always working on your craft. I'm not nosy. I just am
Yeah.
curious or plotting out a story.
There would be no novels if I didn't take such a massive interest in what was going on in other people's lives all the time. No novels.
So I'm just desperate to know because so especially with thrillers, and I love thrillers because to me they are the best escape. And you know when we're with all the twists and turns of what goes on through the course of this book, it's fantastic. And so when you're sitting down, you must be plotting out start to finish, right? Or I mean, I can't imagine that this style of book is the type of thing where you can allow it to go in a surprising direction even for yourself.
Oh yes, that's how I write. There are two ways of writing, and I'm one of those writers who falls down on that side of the divide, and so I don't plan anything.
What?
I come to a book with vague ideas about things I might want to explore, and with this book, I had this vague idea of a boarding school in the countryside in this very, very smart Chi-Chi village, and somebody finding something buried in the grounds. I wasn't sure what it was going to be. I knew there was going to be a sign that said dig here, and I knew that someone was going to dig it up, and I didn't know. I thought it might be some human remains, actually. When it came to the point at writing that scene, I thought, no, bones, too soon for bones, because I'm not even sure if anyone's dead yet. So I buried something else in the ground. So yeah, the whole thing just came from this vague sense of a hot summer, of this beautiful boarding school, of this gorgeous village with the weeping willows and the village pond, and this mysterious buried thing. That was it. So I just start writing and just take off and just see where it all leads me. And that's how I plot. I have to write it to plot it.
Wow, that it just, and I know that there are, I mean, so many of you who do this so well, and it boggles my mind because I get stressed out being on the ride of just following along with the book and needing to know what happens next. So I can't imagine trusting myself to be in the driver's seat because I know we're going to go off a cliff and nothing would make any sense. So that's why we're the readers.
That's a very good analogy, actually. It is like some people like to have a map when they drive, and some people have a vague sense of, well, I'm pretty sure if I turn left here and then take a right there, and there's a tree up there, and that's, yeah. So that's the sort of writer I am. I write without a map.
She trusts her own internal navigation, and it's serving us all well.
Yeah.
So, and I was creeping on your Instagram and looking at some beautiful pictures of one of my favorite places I've ever been, which is Mallorca. And I was just imagining seeing this place through, I mean, ooh and ah, but also through a writer's eyes. So anytime you're anywhere, are you finding inspiration for a story or for a mood, or especially with the way that you build kind of the tension and setting, as you mentioned in particular in this book, but in all of what you write, it appears the setting is very important and very much a tangible character.
Yes, absolutely. Setting is I think there's three things. There's setting, feel, and characters. Plot comes fourth for me after all of those three things. Setting, feel, and characters are the three most important things for me. And sometimes the setting comes first. Sometimes I get this overwhelming need to explore an area. I wrote a novel called I Found You, which is set in this northern seaside town, which I'd driven through once 30 years ago and had never forgotten about. And I just wanted to set a book there. And so I made a story happen there. So wherever I am, little just nuggets and vignettes and glimpses of places. I don't even need to spend a long time in a place to get a feel for wanting to write about it or inhabit it in a book. So it all feeds in. It all just feeds in, and it sits there and it waits for its time. And Mallorca hasn't found its moment yet, but Mallorca may well find its moment.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. So I've had the pleasure of speaking with a number of authors, and I love, especially when we meet someone who writes something dark or takes us down a path of, high tension, and yet the personality is the opposite, right? So very lively or jovial. So what do you enjoy consuming? I mean, you put us in these high stress scenarios, but is this what you like to watch as well?
Yeah.
Do you like to be scared and nail biting, or do you swing the opposite as a consumer of?
No,
Oh, okay.
I do not swing the opposite at all. I very much enjoy taking in culture that you would align with the sorts of books I write. And not necessarily wanting to be scared, but wanting to know. I just love when people don't tell me things. And when there's something going on and that guy looks a bit dodgy, and remember what he did 2 episodes ago, that wasn't right. And just wanting to piece it all together and find out what's really going on. And I think the darkness often comes from having to have that moral ambiguity in a lot of your characters in a thriller or in a TV show. You have to have that sort of dark and light in order to kind of keep unpeeling the layers. So yeah, I think yeah, absolutely. I watch and read exactly the sorts of things that I write.
Who was the character in this book that you were most invested in?
Oh, I would say Tallulah, which it's funny because you say, you know, Kim is a mother, so I should relate to her as a mother, and Sophie is a writer, so I should relate to her as a writer. But actually, Tallulah is a teenager, and I feel really, really strongly when I'm writing a connection with my teenage self. Really, it's very, very strange how this has happened. And also, I suppose I have teenage children as well, but I feel much more when I write teenagers that I'm writing about myself as a teenager. And yeah, so Tallulah, and I wasn't going to write about Tallulah originally. It was just going to be Kim and Sophie. And then I got to this point because I don't have a plan or a roadmap. I'm thinking, I really don't know how Tallulah ended up in that house that night, at that pool party. I don't know how she met those people or who they were. So I'm going to have to roll backwards and check into Tallulah's storyline. So she came quite late in the day, and I felt very invested in her, very.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, really, because it's her story that we're really following. And so, yeah, I love to hear how these elements come together. Just as a fan of good books, it's remarkable the genius that goes into this. So we're very, very inspired and very appreciative of your storytelling, no doubt about it. Do you take notes when you're walking around? Do you wake up in the middle of the night and write something down? Or, I mean, you must always be full of ideas. And do you share them immediately, say, with your family or whoever you're out to dinner with? Or is it all kind of a secret concoction until it goes down on paper?
I'm not full of ideas. I have to be entirely honest and say I'm not full of ideas. My head is normally full of music, which sounds really, really strange.
Great.
I suffer horribly from earworms, so I've nearly always got music in my head. And then it's full of the minutiae of life. It's full of like looking at people and wondering about people. But every now and then something lands in my head, and it will either be something about something I haven't written about yet, which I think I would really quite like to write about that one day. And I'll get a little shiver of just thinking that, yeah, I'm going to tuck that away in my back pocket and come back to it. Or it could be something about my work in progress. I will just suddenly be walking down the street or standing in the shower or walking the dog, and I'll think, I've got it. I know what I can do in the next chapter. But I don't have a notebook, and I don't walk around with my head full of ideas. I walk around with my head full of cotton wool most of the time. But things just pop into it every now and then. And I know when they arrive. Yeah. Well, the music is mad. The music never stops. But yeah. Every now and then something gets through.
Are we talking like a classical symphony going on, or like a generic playlist? Because a lot of the books coming out right now, they've been having an accompanying playlist on Spotify, which is pretty fun.
Right. Well, yes, I used to write my earlier novels when I was much younger. I used to write to a playlist. And there's still songs where when I hear them, it takes me right back to writing some of those earlier novels. But now I write in silence. So I don't really know where I just get a song in my head and I play it on a loop in my head until another song arrives, and then I play that on a loop in my head. I don't know what it means. Maybe I'm just saving headspace so that I can feel the ideas come. That's what it is.
That's what it is. That's
Yeah,
perfect. Is
yeah.
anything off limits? I wonder this with writers, especially. We've got teenagers here. We've got a lot of different personalities coming in and meeting friends or boyfriends or girlfriends. And, the way that you write characters, we know that things are not always as they present themselves, and people are complex and mysterious and maybe hiding something or not presenting a full picture. Do you are you forbidden from taking anything from your life, or is it kind of a free for all?
No, I'm not. I'm not forbidden. In fact, my elder daughter is in full three dimensions in one of my recent novels.
Oh.
She just fit the bill. She just was I started writing this teenage girl, and I just thought, I know who'd be good here.
Oh.
Yeah, so I put her in there. And funnily enough, when we were in Mallorca, she doesn't read. This child never reads.
Oh.
She's standing in the pool with her Kindle saying, "I've just downloaded one of your books." And I said, "Oh."
Which
On
one?
Audible. I said, "Which one?" And she said, "Of course, it's the one that I put her in, thinking she would never read it."
Oh.
I don't know how far she's got with it, but she hasn't said anything yet. But no, I don't, there's nothing, I don't think, as long as it wasn't going to hurt anybody's feelings
Right.
or betray somebody's confidence or trust, I would put anything in a book. It's all for the picking, as far as I'm concerned.
So it must make you a little nutty to be a writer, and obviously you're a passionate reader, as all writers are, and then be raising children who are reluctant readers, right? I go through this. I have only one son, and he's 9 years old, and it is just it's been quite a task to keep him from saying that books are only for librarians, and they're very, very boring.
Oh, yeah. Oh, both of my girls were bookworms when they were younger. I will say that. My youngest daughter read all Sophie Kinsella's shopaholic novels,
Love
all
those.
of them, when she was 8 years old, in the space of about 3 weeks. So they both have that capacity to be completely absorbed in a book and binge read. They can both do that, but they just choose not to at this point in their lives. And I cannot judge, because I stopped reading when I was 13, and I didn't read a book again until I was 21. So that's my hope. My hope is that they'll come back to books. Having been bookworms, they
Yes.
may return to their roots when they're a bit older,
It's
I hope.
deep in there. It's deep in there for sure.
Exactly.
Come
Once
on.
a bookworm, always a bookworm.
Well, and just to be able to go through your mom's own library, my goodness, I mean, that is an
Yeah.
absolute must. Let me
Yes.
ask you, as you remember when you were initially a bookworm, before you took that little 7-year break, do you remember what it was that made you fall in love with reading, and what, or, which book or which series made you realize, I mean, that there's magic in here?
I can't remember consciously ever thinking that. I just knew that I loved to read. There's a children's author in the UK called Enid Blyton, who pretty much every kid who read a book in the sort of 60s, 70s, 80s read Enid Blyton. And she was a huge part of me developing my love of reading. And then I just sort of just hopscotched around from different types of. I went through a phase of reading Charles Dickens as a child out of choice, which is quite extraordinary. I'm not sure I could read Charles Dickens now. I went through a phase of reading Agatha Christie. I went through a phase of reading my dad's thrillers, like the Ken Folletts and stuff like that, the huge books that he used to take on holiday. So I just sort of jumped around, and I don't remember ever thinking consciously about what it was that I was getting from the experience, but just knowing that it was something that I loved doing. And I guess as well, when I was growing up, I didn't have that many options in terms of what I could be doing. Children's TV finished at 6 o'clock, and then you were sort of you were on your own.
Right.
There were no, we only had 4 channels, and none of them showed children's television after a certain time. So that probably informed my love of reading as well. That it was something I could do that was fun after the TV had stopped showing kid stuff.
Yeah,
So
no Disney Plus or nonstop Netflix
none of that,
streaming.
no. And certainly no screen that I could hold in my hand
I know.
and find the world on it.
We blame the tech people because there are just too many options out there. Lisa, what is your
Yes.
advice to anyone who has aspirations for beginning to write? I mean, it can seem so daunting, especially when, say, somebody's a fan of your work and they're consuming these books, and they're just we're right there in it, and we're on this wild journey. It seems out of reach to be able to create an environment and suck the reader in. Where do you begin?
Yeah. Oh, God, that's such a huge question because, of course, I'd probably answer it differently at different points of my writing career. Certainly, my first few books I found much more challenging to write than the books I write now because I've had lots of practice and I've also grown in confidence and developed a sort of faith in my own instincts. So if I give advice now, it would sound much more gung ho. It would just be, just have faith in yourself. Just follow your instincts. Just put your face in front of a screen, put your fingers on a keyboard and make some words happen, and look at them on the screen and then make some more words happen, and just sort of don't kind of question too much what you're doing or whether you just made a mistake 2 paragraphs back or but that's how I write now after 20 books. And so I don't know, and it's hard now for me to remember what it felt like to write my first novel, which was a completely different experience. I was a different person. But I think it's very important not to go into writing your first novel trying to create something for a market. That is absolutely the last thing you should ever do. You should never walk into a bookshop and think, well, that's doing really well. Or read a book that you really loved and think, I'd love to write a book that was like that. You should absolutely only write the thing that comes out of your head when you put your fingertips on the keyboard and start making words happen, and just let yourself in. And don't let the market in, because that's not how great books are made. No great book was ever made because somebody thought they could tap into some sort of zeitgeist. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
When you, though, have such a successful career, is it then a new challenge to kind of tune that out when it's, okay, now my publishers are expecting my next number one New York Times bestseller?
It is. It's kind of terrifying and weird, but I just sort of put my own hands over my ears, la la la, I'm not listening. I'm not going to listen to me being terrified about this. I'm just going to remember, I did it last time, I did it the time before, and I'm going to remember every single person who's written to me and said how much they've enjoyed my book. The book that when I was writing it didn't feel like I was writing a book that lots of people would enjoy. It doesn't feel like that when you're doing it. So I just remember that and just think, don't be terrified. Don't be ridiculous. Just do what you do. Just sit, fingers on keyboard, making words. Just keep doing that. And don't listen to the sort of scaredy cat voices in your head, because it could be really easy to get freaked out by the fact that your last book did really well. And you have this image in your head of everybody at your publishers just sitting there, like sort of, right, Lisa's new book is due. We're all just sitting here ready to go. And then like reading it and going, oh, but no, there's no point thinking like that. I just have to stay positive and just stay focused and just put me into it and not listen to any of that.
Oh my gosh! Well, obviously you have the formula figured out to be able to create what draws us in. And when we book clubbed, Then She Was Gone. I mean, it was really interesting to hear all of the different takes on kind of the emotional roller coaster, and some readers feeling really very upset by the journey, and the emotions that it triggered in people. It was really particularly interesting to be able to sit in a group and hear all of those opinions. Do you enjoy very much hearing what your readers have to say, or is that sometimes a little bit much?
Absolutely depends. Yes, on the whole, it's just like I go onto social media and I get a big warm hug every morning. I just open up my PMs and it's just like, how gorgeous is this? And it's absolutely wonderful. But yeah, particularly, in fact, with then she was gone, I've had some very cross people who cannot believe that I could have let that happen to a character. Particularly they say, as a mother, how could you have written that? As a mother of daughters, I can't believe that you were able to blah, blah, blah. Legitimate, but the fact of the matter is there's literally no point coming to an author and telling them what you didn't like about their book.
Right.
There's no point. It's written. It's finished. There's nothing I can do about it. It's tell your book club you didn't like it, or tell your best friend you didn't like it, but no, don't tell me, because there's nothing I can do at this point.
I have no plans to recook the chicken and bring it out to you at a different temperature. Exactly. It's not happening.
No,
but,
exactly.
And I think the fact that did upset people, I think that was part of what made it great. I mean, it just is, because those emotions were real. I mean, those emotions for us were very real. So it's just, thank you to my friend Natalie for finally opening my eyes and putting me on the Lisa Jewell train. She is a good friend, and I'll owe her forever. Lisa, it has been a pleasure to be able to speak with you, and congratulations on yet another great book. I could not put it down, and I bounced back and forth between the audio as well, which was great. And so it's just truly understand how much pleasure you're giving readers like us, and it's wonderful to be able to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. That's lovely. Thank you so much.
Best of luck on number 21 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, but of course you don't need it.
That's the attitude. That's the attitude. And thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Lisa Jewell, The Night She Disappeared, her latest novel. I mean, she just has the magic touch. And why are British people so fun to talk to? I'm sure they're not all, but she certainly is, Margaret.
I think the way that they express themselves is so fun. I don't know. And I think, I know you've heard me say it before, but that's why I love Love Island so much, is that Love Island UK, because the way they express themselves and just, they're so cheeky.
Yeah.
I love it.
I guess that's why I love the Spice Girls so much.
Oh, yes.
I just need to refer to things as posh, and I'm just going to start saying it even though I don't have the cute accent. Who cares?
Add a little bit of spice.
Right? I know. So we were talking about just, once you read an author and then you want to dive in and read everything else that they write, whether it's from before or you're ready for the next.
Yeah.
And so she is definitely that author for a lot of people who have read, everything from her catalog. And so I have just done 3 of them, but I would dip back to the ones that I've missed, definitely.
Yeah. I read The Family Upstairs first, and
Yes.
then she was gone before we had done it for the book club. And I have several that I'm just putting on the list and going back. And it's kind of like Leanne Moriarty. I did the same thing. I backtracked. But yeah, we keep going back to these authors. I mean, they keep churning out these amazing, incredible books. I mean, Riley Sager, we talked to him on the podcast literally the next day. The book that he said, it's coming out, he announced the title up.
I know.
And I was like, now I have to put it on the list.
Sneaky, right? And actually, after we talked to him, because it was embarrassingly, you had put me in the Riley Sager direction, and I had been missing out on a lot of life. And so I ordered, I need to not be buying books because we're getting so many books sent, which is a beautiful thing. And also we're accessing NetGalley, and so we've got a lot to read loaded up at any given time. But I did order the paperback of Home Before Dark just because I was like, I'll just I need to read this.
You going to read it out loud to Tony? Even though he doesn't like the paranormal?
Oh, yeah, no, he will not allow that. He will leave. He will leave me. At least he'll leave the room or our house.
He'll take a walk around the block.
Yeah, because he thinks that's inviting it in. So, you can't be talking about any of that stuff either.
Okay, so a very side note.
Yes.
Very, very side note. And by the time this podcast comes out, she will already have this gift. But I purchased a spooky gift for a friend. And she works here with us. Her name's Ashley Shabble. She's one of our producers. And I bought something that I thought, oh no, am I inviting? Is she a person who's going to think that it's inviting stuff in because she thinks it's cool?
Mm-hmm.
But there are people that think that's kind of thing.
Is it a Ouija board?
It's a Ouija board pillow.
Oh, dang, that's inviting it into your sleep and your dreams and your
it's like it's a decorative pillow. It's going to go like on a couch.
Okay.
But it doesn't come with like the eye or anything. It's just what the board would look like.
Mm-hmm.
But I bought it thinking, I'm pretty sure she's good, but I don't know about other people in her life and how they're going to feel about it. But she hasn't gotten it yet. She's going to get it for her birthday. She's big into Halloween. Like, that's why.
Love it. Okay.
So, and she thinks the idea of a Ouija board is interesting, but same idea. If she doesn't like it, I'm going to be like, if you are scared of having this, inviting it into your home, you can invite it into my home.
And it's only seasonal decor. Just goes out for the Halloween time.
Oh,
Could
no.
be that.
Well, she puts her fall stuff was out, like her birthday's August 18th, I think. I know. August 18th, and it was out before that.
Oh, wow.
She starts to do the fall thing. It's her favorite thing.
Love it.
She probably didn't. I didn't know we were going to talk about her today, but in this moment of inviting paranormal activity into your home,
Hope you don't mind, Ashley.
Yeah, she'll be all right.
Okay, so authors that you will not turn away. I mean, you've got to go back to.
Well, Riley Sager, obviously.
Yes.
I've read every single one of his books. I, hadn't read Stephen Rowley until he was on the podcast. And I read The Guncle. And I don't buy books. As we know, I'm a big librarian fan. I went out and bought that book. I was like, I want this book. I want this to revisit it. Although very much against Patrick, the character, saying, you're not supposed to have books as trophies. I said, well, watch me, Patrick. I'll show you. And so I went back into the catalog. He has 2 other books, Lily and the Octopus and The Editor. And I read The Editor on audiobook.
Yes.
I had no idea what it was about. It's about Jackie O.
It is?
Yes. It's about Jackie O. I didn't look into it at all, and I do this a lot recently because I have so many books in the stack that I've heard about or whatever. But I just went, okay, well, here we are. And
fascinating.
I was shocked, and it's kind of like a historical take because she really was an editor at this particular publishing company in the years prior to her death.
Whoa.
And so the book is about an author who wrote a novel, and he just, similarly to what I did, walks into, oh, sorry, that was my foot. He walks into a meeting with an editor who likes his book and
it's her.
Yeah. And
my
but his
gosh.
agent didn't tell him.
Oh.
He's like, I knew you'd freak out.
Yeah.
So he walked in and he's like, oh, talking to the assistant as if she's the editor. And she's like, yeah, I'm not. And then in walks Jackie O.
He's like, great.
What? And so, it's in the early 90s, like 93, 94 is when this is set. And she passed away in 94. And it's funny because another person who read this book recently started to dive into the life of Jackie O and her publishing days. And that's what I did too.
Whoa.
But now I have to go back and read Lily
Now
and the
I have
Octopus.
To read this.
Oh, yeah. The audiobook was great.
Oh, okay.
It's one of the actors from, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, he was in Ugly Betty.
Okay.
Can't remember his name, but he does a lot of voice acting. He's been in other things as well as a regular actor and not just voice acting, but it was so good. But he sounds very similar to Stephen Rowley, who did the audiobook for The Guncle.
Yes.
So I had the best time. I loved it. And it was very quick. And they go to like Nantucket. Or no, they go to Martha's Vineyard.
Yes.
And it's just really
good to know.
And it's about an author who's in the
Right.
writing process of writing.
And both of those books are basically everything he wrote is being made into a movie, right?
I believe that one is optioned. I don't know what the progress is on that. The Guncle for sure.
Yes.
And I haven't read Lily and the Octopus. Again,
I haven't yet either.
I'm not going to read any blurbs about it. I have
Right.
no idea.
You're going to go in blind.
There's a wiener dog on the front of the cover, and that's all I know. I'm going to go in
Okay.
feet first.
You're like, wait, I thought this was about oceanography. I'm very
I
confused.
thought it was about a dachshund. I don't know.
Okay, so we've got Stephen Rowley, excuse me.
Is it Rowley? And I said Rowley this whole time?
It is Stephen Rowley, yes.
Gosh. I'm so sorry.
But a more
Please come back on this podcast.
A more
I'm so
common
sorry.
pronunciation is the Rowley, which is why when we interviewed him before we started, he said it's Rowley.
And this whole time I went, no, it's Rowley. I know it's Rowley because I know it's not what I think it is.
Right, I know.
So I just completely flopped myself. But please come back on this podcast because we love you.
He's awesome.
Yes.
And also we were thinking about Taylor Jenkins Reid.
Mm-hmm.
She is somebody who, I mean, once you fall in love with one of these books, of course you're going to need to pick up the next and the next and the next.
Mm-hmm. And I just finished Malibu Rising. I know that you read it.
Yes.
And it's interesting because a former producer that you worked with, Chelsea, reached out to me recently and asked if I'd ever read any of her romance novels that she wrote prior to Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and Malibu Rising. I've read 2 of them, and I really liked them. But so she's spanned different genres at this point, and I've read, I think, 5 of her 7 books.
Whoa. Yeah, she is awesome. So I just spoke with we'll get all our colleagues in here right now. April just finished Malibu Rising. And she pointed out to me something that I did not think about when we were brainstorming crossover characters in books. And she pointed out to me, isn't there a crossover in Malibu Rising and from Evelyn Hugo? And there is.
Okay, so there's a moment in the book that it's like stops at the end of a chapter. Oh my God, you just blew my mind. And I said, this is interesting because,
So he is the one who has the night in Las Vegas with Evelyn. He's the patriarch in Malibu Rising, but he's the one who has the night in Las Vegas with Evelyn Hugo. And they quickly get married and they quickly get it annulled.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
And I missed that completely. And she had asked me that. I go, I don't know. I don't think so. I had just been thinking about this. And yes, it is.
But I also wonder, oh, dang, that's
Isn't that
good.
I know.
I didn't even think about it.
I really love when they do that stuff.
Somebody had, that's a good one. Although there was, again, different moment then. There was a moment at the end of a chapter where it talks about Mick pulling out in his car, and he's not buckled, he was buckled, but he didn't turn his signal on, and pulled out into traffic, not pulled out onto PCH, which is set in Malibu. I'm sure you're shocked by that, but it was a moment where I was like, oh man, something bad's gonna happen right here, but then it felt like inconsequential, that line. So I wonder if that also ties in somehow. And maybe I'm making a big old stretch because there's a plot line in Evelyn Hugo.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So that's where I thought that was where you were going with that. And I was like, oh.
No, I guess he's one of the 7. It's hard to remember all the 7.
Well, damn. I mean, yes. I forgot there were 7, and it's in the title.
Exactly. And bottom line for me, of all of those books, still Daisy Jones is my favorite.
Ooh.
I love that book so much. It really made me cry at the end. I kind of sobbed.
I'm wondering if I didn't like it as much. I liked it. I liked it a lot. But maybe because I listened to it in audiobook. And sometimes with characters very specific like that, they don't match the voice in your head.
Oh, yeah.
And it just felt very like inconsequential to say that word again. But Malibu Rising, it also helped that I was vacationing with my family at the beach.
Oh, yeah.
In California.
I did this one on audio also.
So, but I read that one on my Kindle at a beach in California. So, and I'm from California. Malibu is very prevalent in my life. At some point, we've, gone there as high schoolers, college kids, but... So I think I adapted to that one more than...
Setting can really enhance a story. Not just in the story, but where you're reading it.
I also think Malibu Rising really solidified the need for me to have as much fish in California as I did.
Okay.
I mean, I had like swordfish, halibut, fish and chips, clam chowder.
Wow.
Like, you name it, I ate it. And I think it was because they have a seafood restaurant, and I thought...
Yes.
That sounds really good.
Right.
Calamari. I also had calamari.
So one other topic we could solicit your emails and voicemails, even audio notes, about what foods you've been inspired to eat from books you've read.
Oh, yeah.
What places you've been inspired to go from
Yes.
books you've read?
I know we actually just had someone reach out to us about a book that they really like, and I'll talk about it when I finish reading it. But and I'll mention this person again. But I just requested the book on NetGalley as it's a brand new book, and so I requested it, and I'm going to read it based on one of our listeners.
Oh,
who
fantastic.
reached out to us about it.
Okay. Ooh, that's a good tease.
Yeah,
Gotta love
so-
book. Oh, and then the last person that I should mention is Leanne Moriarty of Being the Books that I'll read everything that comes out, of course.
Yeah.
And I've read, I think, every single thing that she's published.
Probably.
And so I just did the audio of this Apples Never Fall.
Yeah.
And in just her, and of course, we're watching the Hulu series and Nine Perfect Strangers, and this one was not my favorite, this most recent one, but it did hook me in that magical way that she hooks you immediately, and introduces you to a lot of people, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and you're all in it, but it wasn't the most satisfying for me, and honestly felt a little long and a little unnecessarily long, just a tiny bit. But it won't keep me from not immediately consuming whatever she puts out next.
Well, and it's kind of like Jojo Moyes, like there's, they've got these big catalogs of books, and you're not going to have the same love and affection for every single one. There's going to be one that you feel a little less excited about, but you still like it, and you're not going to give up on it. And I think that's important, that if you don't really enjoy a book, maybe give the next one or the one before that a try from the same author.
It's sort of like when parents say, I love all my kids equally. Everybody knows that's a lie.
Who's going to tell Nate?
Luckily, he's the only one. Well, this has been a very fun moment with Margaret. Now I have to get back to my reading list.
Well, I'm going to go have some calamari.
Thanks for listening to Olivia's Book Club, the podcast. I'm your host, Olivia Fierro. Our producer is Margaret Stewart. You can send us an email with your thoughts or your book recommendations. Olivia's Book Club at azfamily.com is the address. And you can check out Olivia's Book Club on Facebook or find us on Instagram. Hello, Bookstagrammers, at olivias.bookclub. And Margaret is at Overbooked and Overdue. Make sure to rate and subscribe to this podcast and tell your friends. You can find us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Amazon Music.